Broncos record prediction, here we go. First week against the Kansas City Chiefs, that's a win with Bo Nix beating Patrick Mahomes. Second week, the Jags come back and the Broncos get revenge. That's a dub. The Rams come in the third week and the Rams beat the Broncos on Sunday Night Football. But the fourth week, the Broncos get right. They beat the San Francisco 49ers on the road. The fifth week, they go and play the Chargers. The Chargers have the Broncos number. That's a loss. And then the Broncos on a short week have to host the Super Bowl champ Seattle Seahawks. That's a loss. Then the Broncos go on a run. They play the Arizona Cardinals in week 7. That's an easy win. Have the Chiefs at home. Another win. They sweep the Chiefs. Then they play the Carolina Panthers on the road. That's a dub. Coming out of the bye week, the Broncos beat the Raiders. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Dolphins. They beat the Jets. They beat the Raiders again. The Broncos are on a roll before hosting the Bills on Christmas, and that is a loss for the Broncos. But then they go on the road and get revenge over the New England Patriots in week 17 on the road. And the final game, the Broncos beat the Chargers to punch their ticket to the number 1 seed.
But with Bo, when you have a young quarterback like Bo, who's already experienced these high leverage postseason football situations early in his career, how much of that can accelerate the year 3 development curve? And what's the next layer of his game that he has to master for Denver's offense to go from efficient to one of the more feared offenses in the league?
I just think it's, the natural progression. I think the more that you play, the better that you get. The more that you're in these situations, the more comfortable and confident you are. I'll say this, he had a tremendous run. You think about the game-winning drives, the late game comebacks that he was able to orchestrate. He certainly is fearless in those moments. And I would say he is underrated in terms of how people view him as a quarterback around the league. Some people will say he's a game manager, not quite a playmaker. I think he's kind of a game manager plus. I think he runs the offense the way that Sean Payton wants him to run the offense, but he has a little more when needed. And we've seen that in the 2-minute situations when he's had to kind of put it on his shoulders and make it happen. The next step, I think, is just kind of dominating the game at the line of scrimmage in the pre-snap phase, giving him more responsibilities where he can check in and out of plays, where he can get the team in the right play based on what he sees or what he anticipates. That's probably the next phase. And the hardest thing to do in this league is to not only go from good to great, but to be great consistently. I think we want to see that jump, but we want to see that jump play out in consistent high-end performances from a young quarterback. Year 3 is when you begin to make the determinations on where these guys are going to stack up. Is he going to be elite? Is he going to be on the cusp of being elite? Is he just going to be a really good player? We want to see that jump consistently each and every week where he's able to show people, hey, I'm a top 5 quarterback. Because if he's playing at that level, then the Broncos are always going to be in the conversation of being a title contender, because in that division with Pat Mahomes, in that conference with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and others, it's the quarterback league. He has to be one of those elite quarterbacks for this team to be the team they want to be.
Absolutely. And I think year 3 is where you're also going to see defensive coordinators really trying to figure out Bo Nix and what this offense is trying to do. Now, Sean Payton's going to do a miraculous job really playing chess out there to keep people guessing. But defensive coordinators are going to spend the offseason studying Nix and what they gleaned from his year 2. What do you think they'll try to take away from his game heading into year 3?
Well, I think the big thing is, before we even talk about Bo Nix, defensively, the trend in the league is to play 2 high safeties, try to defend the run with light boxes, eliminate the big plays so you don't give up explosives. And as defensive coordinators will talk about, let's die a slow death, meaning make them drive the length of the field on a bunch of plays. And we're going to say that the odds are in our favor that they have a negative play or a turnover that gives us the ball back and gets them off the field. Well, some of this acquiring of big personnel is to get teams out of these 2 high safety looks. Because if you're going to have 2 high safeties, that means when we put the big boys on the field, we're going to be able to run the ball at will. And then can you, as a play caller, whether it's Sean Payton or Davis Webb, can we be patient enough and disciplined enough to continue to take the running game when they give it, when they're giving that away easily? And I would say the final piece of it is, how can we create the explosive plays? How can we create the big play opportunities? Is that heavy personnel with Jalen Waddle out wide as the single receiver? So now we get soft coverage. He has free access, and we find a way to create those big plays there. Is it a use of play action? Is it a use of catch and run concepts where we got crossing routes and those things? Part of that will be determined in OTAs and training camp, a little bit in preseason games, but the first quarter of the season will probably be the experimental phase until they really settle in and figure out what the identity of the offense is and how they need to play this offense to better complement a really good defense and a special teams unit that also produces big plays.
Special teams has to be one of the most important parts of the Broncos' identity. Listening to Sean Payton talk this offseason, he was talking a little bit about, outside pressure. And when he talks about not chasing the outside pressure, how much of that reflects the mindset of a coach who's already won at the highest level and understands offense doesn't have to look reckless to be aggressive?
Look, I think what you're trying to do is this, right? So there are people that steal plays because they see the trendiest thing, looking on film, studying those things. But what you always have to remember is, what is our overall philosophy for how we win games? And how does that match the personnel that we currently have? What tweaks do we need to make to put our team in the best position to succeed? And we can have great ideas in the offseason, training camp, mini camp, all those things. But until we start playing it out, we really don't know how we have to play the game to do it. But what you would like to have are enough depth, enough pieces on the roster that allows you to be versatile, to be able to shift styles if needed. You like to have enough depth in your playbook to be able to have the play designs and those things to take advantage of the personnel that you have. And you want to go through that experimental phase, as we talked about, not only in the summer, but the early part of the season. Then you want to hone in on it. I think what Sean Payton is alluding to when he talks about the outside noise, the outside pressure, you can't allow expectations to rush the process, meaning you can't worry about winning the Super Bowl today when you got to get better to put yourself in a position. So the Denver Broncos very well could be a better team with a worse record next season because of the schedule they play. So they can't be distracted by the football world says that you should win 15 games this year because that's the next step, when the next step really is let's get into the tournament and see if we can continue to advance. So just trying to keep the main thing, and not being distracted by the results early, but being focused on being the best team that you can be December, January.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think if you flip to the other side of the ball on the defense, your expectations are that they're going to continuously perform at this championship caliber. But they did lose a veteran stalwart in Jonathan Franklin Myers. And so with the defense already really operating at this high level, what do you think is actually harder? Is it maintaining the standard or the expectation year over year? Or is it finding the additional layer up elsewhere? You mentioned depth that really pushes really good defenses to truly elite. How difficult is it to sustain that, specifically the dominance there when offenses continuously evolve?
Yeah, I think it's really, really tough to maintain the high level of performance that they've shown. Like Nick Benito and others have been able to really get after the quarterback. Vance Joseph has done a great job of using blitzes and simulated pressures to throw the offensive coordinators into a tizzy. They just can't figure out where they're coming from and how they're going about it. So you can scheme your way to a lot of success, but then at the end of the day, you have to play your way to maintain that success. So can we continue to be good tacklers? Can we continue to maintain good leverage on coverage so we don't allow balls to fly over the top of the defense? Do we know exactly what we're trying to do when we're coming with these creative and exotics where we don't have busts and mental errors and those things? I think a lot of it is being on the details to make sure that there's no slippage or complacency that takes a defense that has been a top-5 defense and allows them to fall back to the middle of the pack. I think it's not only the coaches holding the guys to a high standards, but now it's the players policing themselves and making sure they hold their teammates to a high standard in terms of the way that they play and the way they perform each and every week.
So how should Denver realistically measure defensive success this season? Is it more about like the traditional stats like yards and points allowed, or would you place more value on things like pressure rate, turnovers, situational football, and late game stops against elite quarterbacks?
I would say the things that never go out of style that you always want to focus on: points and turnovers. The game comes down to that. All those advanced metrics and all that pressure rate, win rate, run, destruction, all that. The only thing that matters in this game, how many points do you give up and how often can you turn the ball over? Because those stats are the ones that are most related to winning, turnovers in particular. The Broncos have done a great job getting after the passer. The next step in the next evolution is being able to create a massive amount of turnovers. And whether that's knocking the ball loose when guys catch it in the perimeter, whether that's knocking it free from the quarterback, whether that's fooling the quarterback and getting interceptions off tips and overthrows, turnovers are number one, and then points allowed are number two. You cannot give up big plays, but you got to turn it over to give your offense extra opportunities, and then you have to keep the points down. Normally, the magic number is 17. If you hold an offense to 17 points in this league, you should win most of your games. And so I know Vance Joseph and those guys are talking about that. 17 is always the magic number that works in the league.
I'm definitely writing that 17 number down because I think it takes this last era of the Broncos where they were losing big to losing small. Now they're winning small. They need to turn it up, crank it up one last time to start winning big. But it also begs the question where Denver can start to fall in mostly the AFC hierarchy right now. Are they legitimate contenders? Are they still a rising threat? Was last year kind of just a jump or a flash in the pan? When you look at the AFC West specifically, what do you think the biggest advantage is here right now? Is it the coaching? Is it the defense? Is it the trajectory of their franchise quarterback? Or do you think it's a formulaic response of their overall roster balance?
Yeah, normally three things that work together with championship teams is head coach who has Super Bowl experience or pedigree capabilities. It's a quarterback that can play at an elite level. And then it's a disruptive and dominant defense. When you look at the Broncos, they check the boxes in all of those areas. So that's always going to give them a chance to be not only in the tournament, but capable of winning the tournament. As you look at the landscape, first you have to build your team to win a division. Well, I'm looking around the division. I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs that are trying to rebuild their team. Patrick Mahomes is coming off an injury, so we don't know quite yet if he's going to be the magical Mahomes that we've seen in the past. The LA Chargers have a team that is well constructed. They have a really good coach and Jim Harbaugh, but what are we going to get from Justin Herbert when it really, really matters? That is a big key. The Raiders are a team that is undergoing a rebuild. So right on paper, on surface, you feel like the Broncos should be right where they were last year's division champs. Then you look around the league. Okay, you have the New England Patriots who you faced in the championship game. They bring back a lot of pieces, but what is that like when it comes to the magic carpet ride? Can the quarterback come back and continue to build upon what was a MVP caliber season? And how distracted, we'll be honest, how distracted has the offseason been for the head coach when it comes to building out the team? How does Vrabel get the team back to pick up where it left off? Not only with the distractions off the field, but distractions of losing, the Super Bowl hangover that certainly occurs with teams and those things. So there's a lot that you have to deal with there. And then when you really look at the rest of the AFC, it's wide open. The AFC South, you got the Houston Texans, who have a dominant defense, but the quarterback has been up and down. You have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have to prove that consistently they can play at that high level. So you kind of feel like you're in the mix with those teams. And then in the AFC North is, look, a new coach in Baltimore, new coach in Pittsburgh, Cleveland has a new coach, and then the Cincinnati Bengals have to overcome injuries and they have to improve that thing. So if you're Sean Payton and you're looking around, even though he won't do this, you probably feel good about where your team is in terms of making the tournament. And then once you get into the tournament, anybody has a chance. But I think the goal primarily for the Broncos now, can we take care of business in the division and can we get a golden ticket to the tournament? If we do those things, it'll give us a chance to win it all.
Love that. Last question before we get you out of here, Bucky. I was just looking on FanDuel Sportsbook, and Sean Payton is plus 8,000 to win AP NFL Coach of the Year. Baltimore's Jesse Minter is actually the current leader for that category. But talking about Sean Payton, what are some traits that coaches like Sean Payton value during roster construction that fans and media often overlook? And where do you see Denver building with real intentionality rather than simply accumulating talent?
I think the one thing that he's doing, and this probably is a Bill Parcells thing, is can we play complementary ball in any weather, in any environment, home or on the road? I think that's the thing that you're looking for. So do I have enough pieces of the puzzle where if we have to play a cold weather game, we can line it up with the big boys and run the football if we need to. If we're playing a hot weather game down in Miami, we need to be able to figure out how to score 35 plus points. Do we have the capability of doing that? Do we have enough wide receivers? Is quarterback good enough for us to get that. If we have to play a slow down game where the offense is struggling defensively, can we shut them out? I think what you're trying to do is people think about just acquiring talent. It's not that. It's, do we have the complementary pieces to win? And he says this, and I know he says it on occasion about playing complementary ball. Offense, defense, special teams working together to win whatever game that is. To do that, you have to make sure that you have the roster that features enough of the components to allow you to shift the way that you play based on what you have to do on that game. I think that's the next step for Sean Payton, is to make sure that he has all those things, because, look, he's a maestro. He knows how to kind of manipulate the game and do those things. He's been around it enough that where he has the expertise to win games a variety of ways. But to do that, you have to have the personnel. I think he wants to make sure he has the personnel to play complementary ball.
Absolutely. He is Bucky Brooks. You can find him on Fox Sports Radio and anywhere where we're talking about football.